All right, let's get back into the courtroom now. A forensic firearms examiner is on the stand. We're about to see the gun that prosecutors say was used to kill Joseph Ryan. Actually, both guns.
Where the extractor will extract the cartridge case out of the chamber, and the ejector will kick the cartridge case out of the firearm. The slide travels forward again, stripping a new cartridge from the magazine into the chamber. And you can repeat the process by pulling the trigger again.
And can you describe the process by which you examine firearms and ammunition components in a laboratory setting?
I routinely examine firearms and ammunition components like bullets and cartridge cases in the laboratory. Regarding firearms, I conduct a visual and physical examination to determine if they are in working order. I check the safety features of the firearm and test fire the firearm at the lab. Regarding ammunition components, I evaluate these microscopically to determine if they have suitable markings on them for comparison to other ammunition components in the case or to test fires that I produce from a firearm.
And were you asked to analyze firearms, magazines, ammunition components, and a T-shirt for this particular case?
Yes, I was.
Okay. At this point in time, I am going to ask to admit what I believe is going to be Commonwealth's probably 235. And it is, I've got it in a box over here.
All right. Any objection to 235? I think it's the fire.
Now, I believe they're getting the gun that belonged to the defendant, and it was a service revolver. Remember, he worked for law enforcement, and the gun that was used to kill Joseph Ryan was, in fact, his service revolver. But remember, it wasn't the only gun used in this. Juliana said that she shot him as well. After Brendan shot him, I guess he was still moving, and this was according to the testimony of Juliana. She then used the gun that she had, that she says was given to her by Brendan, and then she shoots him in the chest as well. So there were two guns. Right now, we're going to be taking a look at his gun, the gun that was used for the first shot into Joe Ryan.
You can cut them off here. Yeah.
And do you recognize this item?
May I look at the container?
Yes.
Yes, I recognize Commonwealth's Exhibit item 235 by the laboratory number and 231753 and the initials on the container. My initials on the container.
And what is the item?
This item is a firearm. It's a Glock Model 19M 9mm Luger pistol.
And when you began your examination of this firearm, were there any attachments on it?
Yes.
And what was the attachment?
There is a flashlight that's attached to the firearm.
Was it necessary to remove that flashlight?
Yes, for my examination.
And what did you do to determine whether this firearm was in working order?
I performed a visual and physical examination on the firearm. I checked the safety features of the firearm, and I also test fired it.
And what was the result of your examination?
This firearm, the Glock Model 19M, was found to be in mechanical operating condition with the safety features functioning properly.
And are you familiar with the item number 1 on your certificate of analysis lab sheet?
Yes, I am.
And what is that item?
Item 1 on the certificate of analysis for laboratory number N23-1753 is a 9mm Luger cartridge case.
And tell us how you went about analyzing item 1.
I microscopically examined the item 1 cartridge case and compared it to test fires that I produced from Commonwealth's Exhibit 235.
And what was the result of the examination?
The item 1 cartridge case was identified as having been fired in Commonwealth's Exhibit 235, the Glock Model 19M pistol.
And are you familiar with item 80 on your certificate of analysis lab sheet?
Yes.
And what is item 80 and how many parts did it have?
Item 80 on the certificate of analysis for N23-1753 contains 3 bullet fragments and 2 lead fragments from autopsy.
And
All right, I want to bring quickly back in our guest, criminal defense attorney Eric Puryear. Eric, I want to get your general thoughts on this case. Again, this is a guy who works in law enforcement. They're looking at a standard issue Glock that he used to kill this guy. And again, forensics are important because how far he was or when he shot him or where he shot him, all those things could be important to determine if he was telling the truth, and even more so, whether the au pair was telling the truth when she was on the stand.
Oh, most definitely. This is one of those cases where the forensics don't really tell us, they don't crack the case open, but they do help show whether or not each of these statements was really true, whether there's something that was missing. It kind of firms up the case from the state's perspective, and I think that that's what they are slowly moving towards as the case proceeds.
What did you make of the au pair's testimony? I mean, basically what we're going to see now as the state sort of plays out its case is basically going to be corroborating her story. But when I look at it from the perspective of a defense attorney, I'm thinking there's nothing she told this jury that she couldn't have already learned from the police. Because again, the defense is claiming that she's basically taking this deal and sort of regurgitating what the police want her to so that she can get out of there and get back home to Brazil.
I think that is going to be the core of the defense's cross-exam of her, and it's going to be the core of what they work on as the case goes forward, too. She has every reason to want to point the finger at the husband. She has every reason to want to take that deal to get the benefit of it, and I think the defense is going to focus heavily on that because you're quite correct. She could just regurgitate what the police tell her, put a nice bow on it, and use that as her kind of get-out-of-jail-free card.
So my question for you is, they're going to hear from her, or they heard from her. Will they have to hear from this defendant in order to bolster their defense?
And that is always a hard call to make from a defense perspective. On one hand, there is a right against self-incrimination, and avoiding having your client cross-examined can be a very helpful thing. On the other hand, though, if you don't take the stand, if you don't tell the jury your side, a lot of times, even with instructions about how the jury should not hold that against the defendant, I can't help but think there is something lost in the defense of a case there. So it's a very tough call to make.
Yeah, especially if you're claiming you didn't do it or you did it under certain circumstances. They're going to want to hear those circumstances. Eric Puryear, thank you so much for joining us today. Truly appreciate it, as always. Folks, I want you to stick around because when we come back, we're going to, of course, have more key testimony in the murder trial against Brendan Banfield. You don't know what's coming up next, so keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Here's a look at the trials that we're tracking here at Court TV. In Texas, court ended early today. We now expect the state to rest their case against Adrian Gonzalez tomorrow. Again, he's the former Uvalde officer accused of failing to confront a school shooter. And in New Jersey, testimony continues for Paul Canero. Prosecutors there say that he killed his own brother and his brother's entire family before setting their house on fire. And in Georgia, the fate of Susan Embert is now in the hands of a jury for the third time in the shooting death of her husband, although she claims that he shot himself. And of course, in Virginia, the state's case continues for Brendan Banfield, who's accused of conspiring with his au pair to kill his wife, Christine, and another man, Joseph Ryan. Right now, a firearms expert is describing the alleged murder weapons used to kill Joseph Ryan. Let's go back in for more of her direct.
The autopsy of Joseph Ryan.
And tell us how you went about analyzing these bullet fragments.
The bullet fragments were designated items 80A, 80B, and 80C. These were microscopically examined, and the item 80A bullet fragment was compared to test fires produced from Commonwealth's exhibit item 235, the Glock Model 19M pistol.
And we can put that item aside, and we're going to move on to the a different firearm. And Judge, I'm going to ask to admit this as Commonwealth's 236.
236, any objection to 236?
I'm sorry.
230 is the second firearm. All right, 236.
And do you recognize this item?
Yes, I recognize this item by the laboratory number N23-1753 and my initials on the container.
And what is it?
This item is a firearm. It's a Glock Model 43X 9mm Luger pistol.
And what did you do to determine whether this firearm was in working order?
I performed a visual and physical examination on the firearm, checked the safety features, and I also test fired the firearm.
And what was the result of your examination?
This firearm, the Glock Model 43X, was found to be in mechanical operating condition with the safety features functioning properly.
And are you familiar with item 2 on your certificate of analysis lab sheet?
Yes.
And what is item 2?
Item 2 for laboratory number N23-1753 is a 9mm Luger cartridge case.
And can you tell us how you went about analyzing the cartridge case?
I microscopically analyzed the item 2 cartridge case and compared it to test fires that I produced from Commonwealth's exhibit 236, the Glock Model 43X pistol.
And I'm sorry, what was the result of the examination?
The item 2 cartridge case was identified as having been fired in Commonwealth's exhibit 236, the Glock Model 43X.
And are you familiar with item 81 on your certificate of analysis lab sheet?
Yes, I am.
And what is it?
Item 81 on laboratory case number N23-1753 is a bullet from the autopsy of Joseph Ryan.
And tell us how you went about analyzing this bullet.
I microscopically examined the bullet, item 81, and compared it to test fires from Commonwealth's exhibit 236, the Glock Model 43X pistol.
And what was the result of your examination?
The item 81 bullet was identified as having been fired from Commonwealth's exhibit 236, the Glock Model 43X pistol.
Did you memorialize your conclusions in a certificate of analysis?
Yes.
In a moment, I hope to show you that.
All right, as they get that together, I want to remind you of the testimony of the medical examiner of how this went down. Apparently, Joseph Ryan was shot in the face, just under the eye and the cheek area, from right to left, and that was with Brendan Banfield's gun. And she said there was no stippling and no gunpowder, which means there was some distance between the two of them. And then after that, she said it likely would have killed him, but it wouldn't have killed him right away. And then after that, he was shot by the gun that Juliana was holding, and that's the gun that we're seeing now. So I believe they got that set up again. Let's go back into court.
Take a look at the document that's displayed on your screen. Can you see it?
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
Okay. I'm going to scroll through it. This has been stipulated to its admissibility. Is this your lab sheet?
Yes, it is.
And can you note the date for us?
This is the certificate of analysis that I produced on this case. The certificate of analysis is dated April 11th, 2023.
And does this lab sheet reflect the results that we've just discussed?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Judge, if we could terminate this view, I would ask to admit this as Commonwealth 234.
230, any objection to 234? You need your microphone, Mr. Carroll, I can't.
I don't have an objection, Judge, but I'd like to leave this up for cross-examination.
Well, I don't, are you done now? Or?
I have one more section.
Okay, yes, but I'm sure they can leave it up for you.
Yes.
Okay. So it is an evidence as 234. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Were you asked to do an additional analysis in this case at a later date?
Yes, I was.
What type of analysis were you asked to do?
I was asked to perform a muzzle-to-target distance determination examination.
And which items did you use? Which exhibits and items did you use to do that?
For that examination, I used item 83, which is a T-shirt. I also used it's my item 5, the Glock Model 43X pistol and cartridges in the case.
And is that the Glock 43X pistol that we just examined here?
Yes.
What is a muzzle-to-target distance determination?
A muzzle-to-target distance determination is an examination that's conducted in an attempt to determine the approximate distance the muzzle of the firearm was from the target at the time of firing.
And how is it possible to determine how far away a firearm was at the time it was fired?
When a firearm is fired, not only does the bullet exit the firearm, but also gunshot residues. These residues leave the firearm in the shape of a cone, and they are comprised of burned, unburned, partially burned gunpowder particles, as well as vaporous lead or smoke, lead particulate, and really anything else that's in the barrel at the time of firing. And these residues can be deposited in a predictable and reproducible pattern at certain distances. So in the laboratory, I can examine items of clothing, examine them for gunshot residues, and then compare them to known targets that I've created in the laboratory.
And how do you conduct this examination in the laboratory?
Regarding the evidence item of clothing, I visually, microscopically, and chemically process that for the presence of gunshot residues. I also create test targets at known distances and compare those test targets to the results of the evidence clothing.
And were you able to draw any conclusions about the distance between the muzzle of the 43X and the hole in the T-shirt?
Yes.
And what was that conclusion?
The T-shirt, item 83 on my lab report, had a hole in the front left middle area, and this area was visually, microscopically, and chemically processed for gunshot residues, and no pattern of residues was found. Therefore, this is indicative of the muzzle of the Glock 43X having been greater than approximately 21 inches from the hole in the shirt at the time of firing, barring the presence of an intervening object.
And did you memorialize your conclusions in a certificate of analysis?
Yes, I did.
And Judge, if I could have this next item displayed only to the witness. Do you see the document on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. And this is, I'm asking to admit this as Commonwealth 231, and it has been stipulated to.
I already have 231 as Christine's phone with
Oh, I'm sorry. Then
the app showing.
we'll do that as
Correct, Shannon?
Yes. 235,
235 is the firearm Glock 19M.
236,
236 is a firearm Glock 43X.
237,
That is blank.
237.
237. Any objection? All right. Thank you.
I'm going to scroll through this so that you can see. Is this your lab sheet?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions for you. Mr. Carroll is going to have some questions for you. I'm going to separate for this for just a moment so that only the lab sheets that Mr.
Okay.
Carroll is looking
All right,
for are showing.
Take a moment to do that. Mr. Carroll, are you going to need the firearms themselves for your cross-examination? Okay.
So what we just heard, as far as the shot fired by Juliana Magalhaes, it was more than 21 inches away because there was no gunpowder on the T-shirt. And just as an example, these are 11 inches, right? There's a piece of paper. This is 22 inches, so she was further away than this. Don't know how much that tells the jury, but we'll have more testimony from that firearms expert when we come back. Keep it here on Court TV.
Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was there, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The Au Pair Affair murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Welcome back, folks. We're in Virginia for day 3 of the Au Pair Affair murder trial for Brendan Banfield. He's accused of hatching a plot with the family's live-in nanny to kill his wife, Christine, and then try to pin it on a stranger that they met on a fetish dating website, Joseph Ryan. Prosecutors say they also killed Ryan and tried to make it look like self-defense so that they were protecting her. The au pair, Juliana Magalhaes, pled guilty to manslaughter in the case. She testified against Brendan, was on the stand for about a day and a half, and she said that he came up with the plan so that they could be together and they would avoid a costly divorce from his wife. All right, let's go back inside the courtroom now. The firearms expert is now testifying, facing cross-examination by the defense.
I guess months before this trial date, I indicated that I was going to stipulate to your lab sheets when they asked me to do that, but I did have some questions related to how you receive the firearms and what you do with the firearms after you're done. That's okay. Mm-hmm. So at some point you receive, and if I'm assuming something wrong, please tell me.
Okay.
At some point you receive the firearms from the evidence detectives at Fairfax County Police Department, correct?
The firearms are submitted to the laboratory to evidence receiving specialist, and that's when they get a laboratory number assigned to them and they're entered into our system.
Okay. And so there's someone in your organization that takes it and then brings it to you for whatever the specific test is?
They receive the evidence from the agency. They may transfer that evidence to the section, or I may pick up the evidence at their section.
Okay, and I think we're talking about on 235, Exhibit 235, we're talking about the Glock 19M?
Yes.
Okay. Was it packaged like it was today for you when you opened it up?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so same packaging, and then you put yellow tape over it after you're done?
That's correct.
Okay, and when you took it out, what was the condition of the firearm when you got an opportunity to handle it?
I can refer specifically to my notes, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Can I refer to my notes, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
The Glock Model 19M was received in a closed brown bag with a zip tie through the action of the firearm, and a flashlight was attached to the firearm. And there was possible biological material that I noted on the firearm.
Okay, and the biological material, would that have been blood?
That's outside my area of expertise.
Okay. Well, I guess that my question is there any sort of a cleanup of that firearm in order to do the things that you do to test it?
No, I did not clean the firearm.
Okay, and are there any instructions to police department evidence clerks or detectives who are bringing things like firearms to you and how they should be in, what condition they should be in before you get them?
Firearms can be submitted to the laboratory in the same condition that they are recovered in, particularly ones that are submitted in water. We want the agency to submit the firearm with water or in water.
Okay. And is there any situation where you would want them, if say there were other tests that needed to be done, where you would advise them to do other tests before the tests that you do?
There are some agencies that do fire the firearm for entry into the NIBIN system before it's submitted to the laboratory.
And was that done in this case, do you know?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So the testing, would the testing have you done that you did in creating this lab sheet, would that have caused any contamination to any later blood analysis that was on the gun?
Again, any analysis regarding biological materials outside my area of expertise.
Okay, so there are no policies or anything regarding that?
Typically, if there is a request for a DNA test or a latent print test, that would occur before it comes to the firearms section.
Okay. I have no further questions, Judge.
All right, redirect.
Neither of these firearms were submitted to you in water, correct?
That's correct.
No further questions, Judge.
All right, is this witness subject to recall?
No, Judge.
All right, so that wraps up the firearm expert. Let's bring in our guest. Joining us this hour to discuss, trial attorney Marlo Greer. Marlo, great to see you as always. And as you just heard, I mean, essentially, not too groundbreaking, but want to get your thoughts on what you can take away from it. Again, no gunpowder or stippling found on the victim or on a T-shirt worn by the victim, the male victim in this case, Joe Ryan, meaning that the shots had to have occurred more than 21 inches away. Again, as I showed, it's two basically pieces of paper. That's 22 inches or so. How much or anything does that tell us about the case?
I'm not sure really what that does tell us other than where people may have been positioned. I love the fact that you put two pieces of paper together. That's actually a great way to do it in a way that, you know, could have been used in court and maybe used later if they're watching the show. But I am still having trouble with the defense attorney's cross-examination and knowing exactly where he's going. It sounds like we're talking a little bit about some contamination. I expected a little more redirect on that. Didn't really hear it. And so I think he's just sowing reasonable doubt as far as picking apart little things to see what he can really get in there.
Yeah, I think what he was talking about here, I do know that there was some blood found on Mr. Banfield's gun, and maybe it seemed like he was trying to suggest that there would have been some contamination. It was sent to her. She noted the biological material on the gun, so maybe there was something there. I think he was reaching, and sometimes defense attorneys do that, you know, because you do know in most instances it is sent before it goes on for further testing. That DNA testing on that biological material would have been done. But I guess he was reaching and saying maybe it wasn't in this case.
It could have been, or that it came from someplace else other than this gun, and potentially it was in fact contaminated. We're really just questioning, how did the lab handle it? How did the police department handle it? Was it given to her? Was the chain, what we call chain of custody, meaning, did it go from point A to B to C in the same manner as it was picked up at the scene, or did something happen to it? And so potentially that blood is going to have some more relevance later on that we don't quite know yet. And he hopefully will bring that out and try to lay the foundation, so to speak, and tie it all together so that we understand really where he's going with it.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, these last two witnesses, the fingerprint expert, the firearms expert, I wouldn't call them, certainly not wins. I don't know if I call them losses, but certainly not wins for the prosecution. Why are we hearing from them in the prosecution's case?
Again, they really need to set the scene. And so obviously she went on first. And so we got the most explosive testimony out first. Now they're bringing in experts, which tend to be a little bit drier. The last person that we saw, I thought she did a great job testifying. It's clear that she's testified many times in the past. She would be asked a question, she would immediately turn to the jury and speak to the jury, and always was very clear and concise, which is really what you should be doing as a witness in trial. You want to speak to the jury. There may be a person here that's asking you questions, but you really want to ignore that person other than answering their questions, because you're talking to the jury and you're trying to convince the jury. I felt she really did a good job of that, but firearms experts and fingerprint experts, they're never really going to hit it out of the park. They have to have something to tie everything in, and this trial's a long trial. I think we're going to see evidence come in like this in bits and pieces, and we are going to be wondering, hey, is this going to be tied up? Is it going to be wrapped up? Where is it going? And hopefully the prosecution puts bows on everything.
Yeah, she was a credible and very obviously experienced witness. I couldn't agree more on that point.